Hello everyone, and today we have a special little thing where I got to work with a 3D printing filament company, and they are called 3DHOJOR, I think. I asked them how to pronounce it, and they said the R is pronounced like a Y, and they said ho is like home, and so I assume 3D is separated. Anyway, let's get to the filament. I was given 2 rolls of 95A TPU filament, and I plan to use this on a few other projects, but we need to get this tuned in. So I'm going to make a small video about trying to tune in this filament. Basically, that's what the whole video is going to be. But first things first is we have to talk about some of the points that they want me to talk about, which I actually don't know what they are. I have to go look at them right now. So they don't actually have many points that they want me to talk about, but I will talk about them nevertheless just to get them out of the way. The 95A TPU has very good flexibility and durability, which is why it's just a great filament to use for general applications, surprisingly, which people have now been really experimenting with, and really other YouTubers have been trying to make this more of a common knowledge thing. It says on their sales thing on my little application that they have a 0 clog guarantee. They don't say what they will do if you do get a clog, but that's apparently a thing where they have tried specifically to design it for printing perfectly, I guess, at least in terms of not getting all stuck in your machine. Like I said, I don't know what they will do to actually back that up, but that's something they're trying to state. That's on them, not me. They told me to say it. And they are saying that some of the specialized niches that this works really good for is robotics, which Maker's Muse shows off really well. He's been showing off TPU in applications for battle bots, which, for if you don't know, you make robots that fight each other and break each other. So he's been doing really good in that application. They say that the medical field is very good for 95A TPU. Personally, I wouldn't know much about that. That's way beyond my scope of knowledge. And then there is automotive specialized parts, which is theoretically one of the best areas for TPU, or just 3D printing in general, because there's lots of cars and there's lots of little different bits that they keep doing, and I hate cars in general because of that. They keep doing dumb stuff with cars and they always change them. So if there's a part that you can't get, sometimes you can 3D print it, which is, you know, surprising for a lot of people, especially if there's now a small possibility for metal 3D printing, but that is also not what this video is about. So that was what they had on their little sales thing. I want to look at the spool, see how the spool is in general. So first of all, average cardboard box, nothing special about that. Probably could be used as the DIY filament dryer, which you may need depending on where you live and with this TPU. I will try and remember to link that video in the description showing off that technique of how to make one of these boxes into a DIY filament dryer. I didn't make it. And another great thing to see is that it's on a cardboard spool. Now, some people don't like the cardboard spool because it can start to degrade, and I believe these don't work with usually multi-material systems. You can 3D print rims and stuff, I think, that make it a little more acceptable, but I have noticed that cardboard spools do kind of leave a fine dust on my spool holder from spinning and kind of grinding down just slightly, but usually it doesn't become an issue for, you know, printability or anything like that. It's just a personal preference thing. Again, you could probably print a ring to go and protect against that. Personally, I really like the cardboard stuff because I think that that recycling is gonna be a really important thing within the next decade, especially, but, you know, maybe even possibly the next 20 years. One thing that I do not like is that there are not many options of where to actually thread your filament. Now, the TPU is not actually that big of a deal. On a harder filament, though, I personally like more spots along the rim so that you can have more options of where to thread it through, make it a little easier. But with the TPU, you know, you can thread it through without messing up and bending, kinking, that sort of stuff on the filament. But also, it would be nice to see if they added a couple more holes in case your length gets stuck somewhere in that region. But of course, you can always do it a little bit earlier as well. They have a little sticker, it looks like, on the on the cardboard spool, has the recommended settings, so we will try and check that, but we will have to do some general tests because sometimes, you know, it really depends on the machine. You don't know what's actually going to be the best settings. It also has a gram gauge trying to estimate about how much filament is left on the spool, which is nice to see. The bag is vacuum sealed. It, however, does not look like it's a reusable bag, so this will just have to go into, well, it looks like the garbage because I don't think that there's any recycling symbol on the bag. What's the price on this filament? So this TPU is a little more affordable than average, or, you know, on par with some of the more affordable TPU. Basically, my only experience has been with Polymaker TPU. I've also worked with Zero TPU, Z-I-R-O, but it's been a while since I bought that, so I can't remember how much it costed. Polymaker TPU is quite a bit more expensive typically, but they do come with resealable bags. This one does not, which is a little unfortunate, especially for this being a necessary filament to try and keep dry. It does have a huge silica gel bag in there. Hopefully that has done its job. However, storing this afterward might be a bit of a pain for the average person because even I have a lot of difficulty trying to squeeze all the air out of a big bag that can properly, you know, close off on this type of filament. Luckily, I live in Arizona, but we are also about to have the monsoons coming, which means lots of rain and lots of water in the air, unfortunately for this. Like I said, I got two colors. I got gray and I have black. So I got two spools that I believe are 1 kilograms, which also beats out Polymaker in this instance because they usually have reduced spools, I think, of their TPU. I might be wrong about that, but I know that it is still cheaper either way. So let's use the gray to try and do our first test, which is just going to be a basic Benchie to see what kind of quality issues we may have. I assume there's going to be some stringing right out of the gate, so that's usually the only issue that I notice with the default setting. We're going to be printing it on the Bamboo Labs P1P with Bamboo Studio, and usually everything works out on Bamboo Studio with the generic TPU settings, except for it needs a little bit of retraction, a little bit more retraction, which then it helps reduce that stringing. So let's go and see how that works. Okay, so here is the first print with this filament in the gray 95A TPU. First impressions is that it looks pretty good. There's nothing inherently wrong with it as far as I can tell. The stringing is actually pretty minimal. There's a little bit in the actual cabin area and one big one on the final pull from the filament or from the print itself. Yeah, my first impressions are pretty good. Let me get this off here. Okay, so this was printed on a G10 build plate for the P1P, obviously you can see that. So this is not a common surface for other people to reference, but we're gonna see how the removal is. Obviously it shouldn't be bad since it is G10, but let's see. Very easy, did have a little bit of adhesion still, so that's, you know, neat, interesting, whatever. The text did come out fairly well. You can definitely see some of the line strokes here on the inside, so I can make it a little more difficult to read. I could make the text a little bit deeper, but this was the default text depth on the default Benchie. I made a version that has a flat bottom so you can add labels for what the brand and filament is. Now this, off the bat, I don't know what I don't remember what the default infill was, but this is pretty tough. It's not super flexy, but it is bending. That makes it a little bit interesting of a filament because it can work for many practical applications durability wise. However, for actually flexing, maybe a bit iffy, but this is also a lot of thinner walls. If you are able to make it with less wall layers, less infill, I'm sure this would come out a lot better, or a lot flexier, not better, you know, better for flexy reasons. Now, as I've been talking about this, I've been trying to observe it, and there are tiny issues, and usually it has to do with some of the overhangs. So right here, there's a little bit of a lip that comes off here on the very bottom on the, I think, both sides of the hull on the arch there, it didn't quite fully form properly. There's some sagging on the front here, and then also a little bit of sagging on the back window. Everywhere else seems fine. There is the average hole line, but that is that's been something that people try to drive themselves mad tuning out, and everything else seems good. The smaller circles do have a little bit of sagging and such. You know, if you really wanted to make it perfect, you could tune that. And also the chimney has like maybe a little bit of ringing, but that can also come down to it being a flexible filament and the filament and the printer going too fast, and thus it might have been pulling and dragging the chimney around, so then the layers don't lay down properly. So I'm going to go on my slicer, do a little bit of research, and see what we can do to tune this stuff out and see if we can get a perfect print on the next print, which will be the bucket of octopi, or octopods, whatever it's called. The flexi octopus that everyone uses to test flexible filament. Okay, so I was doing some research about the overhangs, and honestly, there isn't a whole lot about tuning overhangs. It's pretty cut and dry, and unfortunately, a lot of it doesn't really seem to apply here. This is because the main one that I saw was cooling, and they just say to turn up the cooling. However, the fan speed is already set to be at 100%. So as far as I can tell, it's at 100%, basically. The other thing was to make finer layers, which would then just, it would make the print a little bit longer, and it would also make a little more space for the area to build properly. And then the last thing would be to slow it down, which also ups the print time. So those are pretty basic. I don't think I probably need to demonstrate that. Maybe I will turn down the print speed a little bit to see if it'll help on some later tests, because I plan to come back to the Benchie and see if I can make it a little more flexible. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the advanced... wait, where is it? Okay, setting overrides. I'm going to change the retraction length from 0.4 to 0.7, which usually helps reduce the stringing, even though it's already pretty good here. I'm hoping this will completely eliminate it, but we'll see. I won't worry about speeds or anything, and now I need to get my test model. There he is, the TPU octopus, octopods, whatever. I don't exactly know who the original creator of this was. There's so many people who've re-uploaded it. So this isn't going to show overhangs very well. It might sag on the eyes, but usually it doesn't, I think. Which is why I'm also not going to worry about turning down the speeds quite yet. I just want to see the stringing between the legs and then show off some of the flexibility, maybe. I might turn down the infill for this. It's not even using my regular profile, so let's change the infill. Alright, well I'm just going to go with 3D honeycomb for now, and I'm also going to reduce this to 5% infill. Or at least we're going to see what it looks like with 5% infill. It might be too small. But I believe that the 3D honeycomb is pretty, it fills up a lot. Does a good job of covering the area, so I think that this is what I want to try. Hopefully this will result in a squishier squid. And it says it'll take about an hour to print, cost about 23 cents to print this squid. Let's see, that's the only thing that I've changed so far on this profile for this is the retraction, length, and the price of the filament roll, which is about $25, $24 when it's not on sale. It's on sale for $20 currently. Let's print this and see what happens. Okay, so here is the octopus, the octopode, whatever they want to call it, and I see almost no stringing, and what is there is very minor. There's one over here, there's a little bit in the back here, but it's very thin. Most of that can just be peeled off. So let's take this off the build plate, see how difficult that's gonna be. Okay, so usually this model gives a little bit of difficulty peeling off because it's not just a solid object, it's got these little legs, so you gotta kind of loosen these up, and then you can take away from the center of it and peel it up, hopefully. Oh boy, okay. Alright, so there I was able to pull up on the back of the head and pull it out. And the head is squishy. It's got the squish. still might not be as squishy for people who want the novelty of squishy 3D prints, but that is part of the 95A thing, is that it has the in-between firmness to be able to be printed really easily, but also still have the flexible capability. So yeah, squish is not exactly 95A's, it's not always 95A's strong point, but yeah, you have the bendy legs. They're not super bendy, they're pretty firm actually when it gets up close to the base, because there are the walls that stiffen it up. So another way you can try and make things just generally more squishy is to have fewer walls, but I think that it only has 2 walls on this. Another thing is that this stuff prints awesomely on G10. The freaking bottom is slick. It feels really nice. I don't know if you'd be able to to do anything with that information, but what can I say? Okay, so there's one last test that I would like to do, but it's starting to get beyond the scope of a simple review video for a filament. So what I'm going to try and do is we're going to take a basic Benchie with a practical shape, or, you know, just a shape of something in general, not just a ball or something, but I want to try and get it as squishy and flexible as possible. So how is this done? Well, I tried to look it up, and at least on YouTube not quickly, but I scrolled through some videos, watched a couple, and none of them really say it, at least in videos with clear titles that should, you know, sound like they lead to what I'm trying to find. Some people probably say it and mention it in other videos, but I just wasn't able to find them on a basic YouTube search. So from my knowledge is, first of all, it's lower infill, obviously, which I already tried on the squid, which kind of helped, but yet it still resisted quite a bit. And that can also come down to wall loops. Wall loops can stiffen something up very much, but there's already only 2, so we're going to turn that down to 1, and we'll also detect thin walls, just in case, to hopefully try and maintain the stability of the object. I'm wondering about top shells. Top and bottom shells, I would like to turn those to 3 to try and reduce that a bit. And then the other thing would be the infill. So it's hard for me to try and pick infill. I'm not very experienced at experimenting with infill because I don't like to experiment very much. I usually couldn't afford to experiment. But what I'm thinking might be the best for flexibility is the lightning infill, at least here on Bamboo Studio. And that is because lightning, I don't know exactly how it works, but to me, based on observation, it looks like it's basically tree supports, but inside of your 3D print. So it only builds infill where it thinks it needs it, which keeps the object mostly hollow. As you can see here, it's only building just the bare minimum of infill, which should allow for a lot of squish on the hull structure there. Now, the posts of the cabin are still 100% filled in, so those are still going to be pretty stiff. However, as you can see, it started to actually empty out the infill on that, surprisingly. And then as you go up, it still remains empty. It builds a little bit of structure inside, which should allow it to be still squishy, and there you go. So we're going to try this out. Hopefully the print doesn't fail. It might. That is a possibility when you're trying to get this thin, but we're going to try it out, and hopefully we can get real squishy with this one. Okay, so here is our last Benchie that should be squishy. I forgot to lower the print speeds in the effort to try and make it more squishy and flexy. There does seem to be some consequences for that. The sagging got a little bit worse for some reason up there. I'm not quite sure if that is like a direct consequence of not having enough infill or what that's about. There is still a little bit of stringing, which is interesting. It looks like a little bit more than when I had the squid print, so that's a bit weird. Of course, we have our big ending strand. And then also there's a little bit of sagging right there above the hull line that are not sagging, but I'm not exactly sure what you'd call that. But yeah, so that's another slight defect that happened from this little experiment. Anyway, let's remove it and see what happens. Okay, so here's the print. Let's see if it just pops off. It does. And ooh, it's definitely squishier. So right here, you can easily indent on here, which is super cool. You can get a little more twist on the hull, or not on the hull, the cabin. I did not look at the back, but there's a serious sag line there, as well as in the front. So there's obviously more tuning to be done here, but like I said, I also forgot to turn down the speeds, unfortunately. But I think we still have a generally good idea of what this filament is capable of. I'm just still having fun squishing the hull. So yeah, this is a little more fun and a little more what you would expect, or what you want from the gimmick of TPU, which is the squishiness. So overall, this filament has been great to work with. It has had no issues as far as I've seen. It just had a little bit of tuning that needs to be figured out here and there. Really just depends on your printer. I guess sometimes the specific roll of filament you got, if like it got like compromised in shipping, which mine didn't. I do not have a filament dryer, so luckily I did not have any issues with any of the moisture, which is obviously good to see out of the box. You don't want to have your filament be full of water as it comes to you, but sometimes it happens just because of how, the world works. But luckily, I think that I got a pretty good shipment here, at least in terms of that. So I'm not quite sure what else there would be to say about the filament. It's just good. It does what TPU should, and it is a quality filament that seems like it's very usable and user-friendly. So if you want to get yourself a roll or more of this filament, I have an affiliate link in the description below. I would really appreciate it if you'd use it, because I don't make any money off of these videos currently. There are also other ways to support me in the description. I'll probably put some links to other good 3D printing stuff down there as well, and also links to my Maker World page. I'll probably put the G10 bed for this printer on there, but also I need to make a video about it because there's something to be aware of with this specific one, at least. If you found this video informational, please leave a like. I hope you enjoyed it. We normally do 3D printing, guitar, drums, and other stuff, just whatever I want sometimes. So if any of that sounds good, please consider subscribing. That's all I have to say for now. So I'm gonna say bye-bye.